Welcome back, dear listeners. Have you ever held onto a promise made long before you were even old enough to understand what it meant? A vow whispered by elders when you were barely a child? A thread tying your future to someone thousands of miles away? For Haya Suleiman, that thread was a name, Jihan Sikander. Haya was barely a year old when her aunt, Sabem Fupo, came to Pakistan from Turkey. In a sudden rush of emotion, she had asked for 1-year-old Haya's hand for her 8-year-old son, Jihan. The families hastily performed a simple nikah. 8-year-old Jihan, a striking boy with pale skin, hazel gold hair, and distant eyes, left for Turkey shortly after. 21 years had passed. 21 long years. And Jihan had never returned to Pakistan. Haya had never seen him grow up. There were no emails, no social media accounts, and no photographs sent over the years. All Haya possessed were those yellowing nikah photographs. An 8-year-old golden-haired boy looking back at her through dusty paper album sleeves. Yet in her heart, Haya had quietly built her entire world around him. She had guarded her emotional loyalty fiercely. Every choice, every boundary she drew around herself was meant for the husband she had never truly known. And now, as her cousin Dewar's wedding celebrations began in full swing, Haya harbored a silent, burning hope. Maybe, just maybe, Jihan and his family would finally arrive from Turkey. The house was brimming with life and excitement. The courtyard of the house next door was transformed into a dazzling open-air pavilion. Bright yellow marigold garlands hung from every wooden pillar, jasmine strands scented the evening air, and string lights glittered like fallen stars against a dark night sky. Inside the house, Haya stood in front of her lobby mirror, battling with her festive adornments. She wore a breathtaking dull gold embroidered lehenga. Her long, straight raven hair fell down her back, and gold jumkas brushed against her neck, but her gold coin tika, with its drop ruby stone, refused to sit straight on her forehead. With every frustrated adjustment, her wristful of golden bangles jingled softly. "Haya! Hurry up! Your father's calling you!" Her mother, Fatima Begum, stunning in a rich silk sari and sparkling diamonds, beckoned her from the bright hallway. Haya's heart did a sudden, frantic flip. Could it be? Had Sabin Fupo arrived? Was Jihan standing outside? Haya lifted her heavy embroidered lehenga and hurried toward the entrance gate, her pulse racing. Standing near the gate under the golden fairy lights was her father, Suleiman, talking animatedly to a wealthy, sophisticated group of guests. He placed a proud hand on the shoulder of a tall, polished young man wearing a crisp, dark suit. "Haya, come meet my friend, Umair Lagari, his wife Mehnaz, and their son, Walid." Haya lowered her kajal-lined eyes in a polite, subtle greeting, but deep down, a heavy disappointment crushed her chest. The guests were not her aunt and Jihan. They were strangers, the Lagari family, prominent and wealthy, looking at Haya with unconcealed, admiring eyes. Haya excused herself politely, offering a faint, strained smile as she turned toward the festive lawn, discreetly wiping a tiny tear from the corner of her eye. On the lawn, the Mehndi function was in full bloom. The women's section was a sea of glittering colors, silver sequins, and vibrant silks. Haya's cousin Aram, wearing a dazzling silver lehenga, rushed through the crowd to grab Haya's hand. "Haya, let's start the dance!" Together the two girls stepped onto the flower-covered dance stage. Haya in gold, Iram in silver, they twirled and danced joyfully to the festive beats. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed, and for a few brief moments Haya let go of her anxieties, laughing under the glittering lights. Yet even in the middle of all the noise, Haya noticed something unusual. Sitting at one of the tables was Shyla, the young wife of one of their second cousins. Despite being in an all-women section, Shyla was completely wrapped in a plain black abaya and headscarf. More strangely, she held a black niqab tightly over her face with 2 fingers, leaving only her intense dark eyes exposed. Whenever the male videographer passed by with his camera, Shyla ducked her head, avoiding the lens altogether. "Look at her," Aram whispered, leaning into Haya as they caught their breath after the dance. "She acts like an alien. Who is she covering her face from in an all-female gathering?" Haya shrugged it off, but an unexplainable, subtle unease lingered in the air. Tired from dancing and burdened by her unanswered thoughts, Haya slipped away from the loud music and walked back into her family's quiet home. She slipped off her golden high heels, setting her bare feet onto the cool marble floor of the lounge. Her heart wouldn't let go of the silence from Turkey. Driven by an overwhelming impulse, Haya reached for the family telephone directory diary, flipped to the international section, and picked up the dark landline receiver. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number to Istanbul. Ring. 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 On the fifth ring, someone picked up. "Hello?" A deep, heavy male voice resonated through the receiver. Haya's breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Assalamu alaikum," she stammered in Urdu. The voice responded briefly in a foreign language before switching to English. "Who is this?" I am talking from Pakistan. I am Sabine's niece. Please, can I speak to her?" "She is out until Zuhr," the voice replied crisply, sounding preoccupied. "Is there any message?" Panic surged through Haya. Was her aunt not coming to Pakistan at all? Was no one coming for her? "Is Saben Pupo not coming to Pakistan for Dawar's wedding?" Haya asked, her voice cracking with suppressed emotion. "No, she is busy." As the caller prepared to hang up, Haya blurted out in desperation, "Wait, who are you? Are you her son, Jihan?" Click. The line went completely dead. Haya stood frozen in the quiet room, holding the silent receiver to her ear. Tears spilled over her lashes, ruining her makeup. The man across the ocean, her husband of 21 years, had disconnected the call without a single warm word. Wiping her tears, Haya fixed her face and stepped out onto the porch. Just then Safar, their house servant, walked up the steps holding a large, fragrant bouquet of fresh white roses along with a plain, white sealed envelope. "Haya Bibi, a courier gave this for you." Haya took the bouquet into her arms, bewildered. Who would send her white roses? With trembling hands she tore open the envelope. Inside was a single white card. "To the girl who cries first from the fear of an unwanted bond forming, and then from the fear of an unwanted bond breaking." Haya gasped, her blood running cold. A day prior she had received a similar note alongside white roses. How did this unknown sender know? How could anyone know that she had wept twice that very evening, first upon meeting the Ligari family and second after being brushed off by Jihan? She clutched the white roses to her chest, her dark eyes scanning the empty, quiet street. The wind rustled the trees. A solitary streetlight flickered in the distance. The shadows seemed to stretch toward her. Someone was watching her every move. But who? The next evening brought the main event, the Bharat. Haya, dressed in a vibrant, full-length, sleeveless red silk frock paired with a shimmering gold dupatta. When her father had to leave early for the venue, Walid Ligari offered to give Haya a ride in his family's luxury sedan. Seeing an opportunity to clear the air, Haya accepted. But as they arrived near the marriage hall, Walid pulled the car away from the brightly lit entrance and drove into a dark, deserted alley behind the building. "Walid, what are you doing? Why are we parking here?" Haya asked nervously. "I just want to talk to you privately about our marriage proposal, Haya," Walid said, his tone overly soft. Haya took a deep breath, clutching her hands in her lap. She decided to be honest to put an end to his interest once and for all. "Walid, I need to tell you the truth. My nikah was performed when I was a child to my cousin in Turkey. My father wants to break it, but I am loyal to my husband. I cannot marry you. Please, tell your parents you're rejecting this proposal." A heavy, terrifying silence filled the car. Haya looked up, expecting to see shock or understanding. Instead, she found a dark, sinister smirk on Waleed's face. The polite young man from the night before was completely gone. "Reject you?" Waleed sneered, his eyes turning cold and predatory. "Why talk about marriage when we can just enjoy this moment right now?" Before Haya could react, Waleed lunged across the console, reaching his hands toward her throat. Haya screamed. With a surge of blind panic, she shoved the passenger door open with all her force and threw herself out of the car. Waleed reached out, snagging her golden dupatta. The silk ripped off her neck as Haya fled into the dark alleyway, her bare arms exposed in the cold night air. "Come back here!" Waleed yelled, springing out of the car. Haya ran frantically down the narrow lane, her heels clicking loudly against the dark pavement. She turned a sharp corner, only to freeze in absolute horror. It was a dead end. High brick walls towered over her. She spun around, but Waleed was already blocking the narrow exit, stepping slowly into the dim streetlight glow with an arrogant, villainous smile. "Where are you going to run now, Haya?" he whispered, stepping closer. Haya pressed her back against the cold brick wall, trembling uncontrollably, her voice choked with tears. "Please, let me go." Waleed reached his hand out toward her. Thwack! Out of nowhere, a heavy metal iron frying pan swung through the dark, striking Waleed forcefully across the side of his head. Waleed groaned in shock, stumbled sideways, and collapsed unconscious onto the alley pavement. Standing behind him was Dolly, the heavily made-up local transgender individual who frequent the neighborhood. Dolly stood tall, holding the frying pan, eyes sharp and unyielding. Haya stood paralyzed with shock. Dolly stepped forward, reached out, and roughly grabbed Haya by the back of her neck and hair, shoving her forward. "Move!" Dolly growled in a rough, stern voice. Dolly dragged the stumbling, tear-stained Haya through the dark alleyways, finally pushing her out near the rear gate of the marriage hall. Haya collapsed onto her knees on the cold pavement, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. Dolly looked down at her with intense, cutting disdain. Pulling a bright, cheap orange embroidered scarf off his own neck, Dolly tossed it harsh over Haya's head. "Bahaya," Dolly whispered coldly. "Shameless." Dolly turned and disappeared into the night shadows. Haya sat huddled on the freezing ground, clutching the cheap orange scarf around her bare shoulders to hide her exposed clothes. The word echoed in her mind like a heavy hammer. "Bahaya. Bahaya. Bahaya." She had never compromised her dignity in her life. This was her very first mistake, a moment of naive trust, and it had almost destroyed her world. Days passed. The wedding events concluded, but the shadow of that night haunted Haya's thoughts. Then came a cold December morning. Haya returned home from her university campus after finding out she'd been selected alongside a rival student, Khadija, known as DJ, for an exchange program to Sans University in Turkey. But as soon as Haya stepped into her house, Safar ran up to her breathless and pale. "Haya Bibi, go inside quickly. Iram Bibi is crying hysterically." Haya rushed into her cousin Iram's bedroom. Iram was sitting on the bed, her face pale, tears falling like endless rain. On the desk in front of her, a laptop screen glowed brightly in the dim room. "Iram, what happened? Why are you crying?" Haya asked, her stomach twisting into knots. Iram lifted her bloodshot eyes. "Haya, tell me. Are we good girls, or are we tarts?" "What are you saying, Iram?" Iram slowly turned the laptop screen toward Haya. A video player was open on a popular video-sharing website. The title, written in bold Roman Urdu, read, "Shachfun ka Mujara," the dance of the respectable. Haya's heart stopped. The video showed the private Mehndi dance performance of Haya and Iram. Someone had secretly recorded their dance, edited it, and uploaded it online. Red circles were digitally drawn over their bodies whenever they bent during a dance step. The caption listed an email address where viewers could pay to download the full, unedited video. Over 1,000 people had already viewed it. "We are ruined, Haya." Aram sobbed uncontrollably, collapsing onto her knees. "Someone filmed us secretly and put it on the internet. If Uncle finds out, if our brothers find out, they will bury us alive." Haya backed away from the desk, her knees giving out. She slid down against the wall, collapsing onto the floor, clutching her head in absolute horror. Her world was crumbling into dust before her very eyes. Later that evening, a prospective suitor's family arrived at the house to formalize a marriage proposal for Irem. Iram sat in the drawing room, her head bowed low under a pink shawl, trembling in silence. Across from her sat the young, polished suitor and his mother. As the elders spoke about family values and modesty, the young suitor quietly slipped his hand under the coffee table, holding his smartphone out of sight. Suddenly, a faint, familiar song played from his phone speaker, a clip of the song "My Name is Sheila," accompanied by the distinct audio of the wedding cheer and applause. The young man quickly muted his phone, looking up with a subtle, arrogant smirk, casting a degrading glance first at Aram, then at Haya. He knew. The whole world knew. Haya sat frozen in her seat, feeling the ground beneath her vanish. The darkness was closing in from every side. Her reputation was shattered, her family's honor was hanging by a thread, and her distant husband in Turkey felt further away than ever before. How will Haya survive this storm of humiliation? Who was the dark figure watching her in the shadows? And what awaits her when she finally lands in Turkey? Find out in the next episode.